notorious tycoon, once said, "When Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, his contemporaries called him the Merchant of Death. But later they named prizes in medicine, chemistry, physics, literature, economics, and peace after him. As for me, I am just a businessman, so they can call me whatever they want. Every war has one or more origins, not just when you want it to happen." The above ironic quote belongs to Sarkis Garabet Saganalian. Among the famous arms dealers in the black market arms trading world, Sarkis Garabet Saganalian is a special and mysterious case. He is not only famous for his huge arms deals, but also for his complex relationships with many governments and organizations around the world. Curiously, while the US government has rewarded him for his contributions to covert operations, they have also arrested and imprisoned him for illegal activities. The international media has called Sarkis the biggest arms smuggler of the 1990s, a title that reflects his influence and the scale of his operations in this field. The late Iraqi president even nicknamed him Merchant of War, showing respect and fear for his ability to supply weapons. The life and career of Sarkis Garabet Saganalian is a dramatic story, with complex relationships and secret transactions, creating a legend in the underground world of arms trafficking. War merchant. The reason Sarkis has such an unflattering name is because when the war between Iran and Iraq broke out in September 1980 and lasted until August 1988, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, did not like Saddam Hussein, but in order to limit Iran's influence and also to retaliate for Iran's capture of 63 American hostages at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November 1979, they asked Sarkis to sell weapons to Iraq. With the support of the U.S. Office of Management and Budget and U.S. intelligence agencies, Sarkis transferred to Saddam Hussein some war equipment worth $1.6 billion, including 175mm cannons made in France. Initially, Iraqi leaders approached some officials in the Reagan administration to buy American 175mm cannons, known as the King of the Battlefield, but were refused. However, those officials whispered to Iraq that they could buy guns through private arms dealers, and one of the most reputable dealers was Sarkis, who gave the deer away to run. In 1981, a group of Iraqi experts first met Sarkis at his office in Miami, Florida, USA. After discussing the basic terms with the Iraqi side, Sarkis went to the French based on information provided by the CIA. Sarkis knew that French President François Mitterrand agreed to allow the transactions as long as they were kept secret because at that time, Iran was also holding French hostages, so Mitterrand did not want the matter to become more controversial. The 175mm artillery deal was codenamed Vulcan by the CIA. Not only that, at Saddam Hussein's request, Sarkis also helped Iraq buy hundreds of 155mm guns from South Africa and shipped them to Austria before delivering them to Iraq through an intermediary to avoid UN sanctions. Not only that, thanks to Sarkis, the Iraqi army also had 300,000 more uniforms, helmets, combat boots, and body armor, worth $28 million, produced by Romania. Later, in an interview with the U.S. television channel 60 Minutes, Sarkis said, "High-ranking U.S. officials, including former President Richard Nixon, former Vice President Spiro Agnew, Nixon's Chief of Staff Colonel Jack Brennan, and Attorney General John N. Mitchell were aware from the beginning of the U.S.'s interests in selling weapons to Iraq. To encourage other senior officials to agree, Nixon wrote a letter to speed things up." Sarkis quipped, "Not only are they united in the gun business, they are also willing to sell their mothers if they can, as long as they make money." Born on February 6, 1929 in Iskenderun, Syria, now part of Turkey, to a family of Armenian origin. In late 1939, Sarkis and his parents moved to Lebanon to escape the war for territory between Syria and Turkey. Due to difficult economic conditions and a lack of life, Sarkis decided to drop out of school and join the French army, which at that time had a garrison in Beirut, Lebanon, as a tank soldier. After World War II ended, Sarkis was discharged and made a living as a ski instructor in Lebanon. There, he married an American woman named Shirley. In 1958, he and his wife moved to Miami, Florida, USA, and had 2 children. Sarkis said, After World War II, the British and American armies had a lot of surplus Land Rovers and Jeeps. Colluding with some commanders of military transport units, I bought it as a liquidated vehicle and then resold it to those in need, mainly the Lebanese army. From buying and selling vehicles led to buying and selling guns. In 1973, a group of Lebanese generals asked Sarkis if he could help them find some weapons. After many days of research, he answered. The first shipment to Lebanon consisted of only a few thousand Garand M1, M2 rifles and Thompson submachine guns made in the US, and the Americans knew this well. When Lebanon broke out in civil war, the demand for weapons increased. Sarkis quickly found another source of supply from Bulgaria, Hungary, and Poland, but initially it was mainly personal guns. Sarkis continued, "Once they had built trust, they sold me mortars and heavy machine guns because they also needed foreign currency, which was US dollars. And not only Lebanon, Sarkis also reached out to Africa by selling weapons to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Western Sahara, Polisario, through the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, selling to Mobutu Sese Seko, president of Zaire, as well as selling to Latin American countries such as Nicaragua and Ecuador. At that time, Sarkis earned more than $12 million per year and was considered the fastest personal money-making machine in the world. In 1982, when the Falklands Islands dispute broke out between the British and Argentines, Sarkis bought Exocet missiles from France and then sold them to Argentina. Thanks to this type of missile, the Argentine Navy sank the British Navy's warship HMS Sheffield. Also in 1982, Sarkis was arrested and sentenced to 5 years of probation for selling 197 heavy machine guns and ammunition worth $1.1 billion to the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. In 1986, Sarkis was arrested again at Miami International Airport for transporting 2 shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles without a permit, but this time a Miami judge declared him innocent. In mid-1990, shortly before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Sarkis appeared in several television interviews, explaining in great detail what he had done in Iraq and naming several U.S. government officials who had been involved in the arms trade. Several members of the U.S. House Intelligence Subcommittee called Sarkis's revelations extremely disturbing to all Americans. With his cards on the table, the U.S. Justice Department charged Sarkis with illegally transporting weapons to Iraq, including 103 armed helicopters. Next, the federal court sentenced Sarkis to 6.5 years in prison and a fine of $20,000. But after only 2 years in prison, Sarkis was released for providing information, helping the U.S. government break up a $100 billion counterfeit invoice originating from Lebanon. Explaining to the U.S. TV channel Frontline about his imprisonment, Sarkis said, "The Americans know very well what I did, and I have been rewarded. When the United Nations declared an arms embargo on Iraq, we supplied them to fight against the common enemy, at that time Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme spiritual leader of Iran. To save face for the U.S., we did not carry out any operations from the U.S., but through some European countries. But when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and the U.S. joined the fight against Saddam Hussein, yesterday's friend became today's enemy. Despite his repentance, the U.S. Justice Department has not yet let Sarkis off the hook. In 2001, he was arrested again on charges of $3 million in bank fraud related to a business deal with Peru. However, just 1 year after being imprisoned, Sarkis revealed the CIA's arms trafficking campaign with Peru, which is believed to have led to the collapse of the Peruvian government led by President Alberto Fujimori, and he was released. The origin of this case is that in 1999, at the suggestion of the CIA, Sarkis arranged a shipment of 50,000 AK-47s, originating from the German Democratic Republic in Jordan, to be sold to the Peruvian government. However, most of those guns ended up in the hands of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, while the U.S. government supported the Colombian government. According to Sarkis's account to Frontline TV, he personally went to Peru and met directly with General Vladimiro Montesinos, director of the Peruvian Intelligence Service. Sarkis said, "I checked and I was convinced by General Montesinos that it was a legitimate purchase. But after I delivered the goods, I had no control how the buyer used them, I had no idea. Later, I learned that there had been a coup in Peru, which led to General Montesinos fleeing the country. Looking back, I was deceived by Vladimiro Montesinos. According to Sarkis, most of the arms deliveries were parachuted from private planes. If you follow IATA, International Air Transport Association regulations, every time you take off, IATA will know where you are going through the global positioning system, and the cost will be 5 times more expensive than flying freely. As for me, 2 hours before my flight, I contact an aviation insurance company, and this company will work with the air traffic control stations along the route I will take. Then they give me the route, the time, the altitude, the radio frequency. They do it very easily. And despite being a war merchant, Sarkis also does charity. In 1988, when a terrible earthquake occurred in the Soviet Union, killing 55,000 people and leaving more than 750,000 homeless, many of them Armenians, Sarkis sent 26 of his jet transport planes with relief supplies. In response to this action, U.S. President George Bush described Sarkis as an individual who actively contributed to strengthening the bonds of human solidarity. On October 5, 2011, Sarkis passed away at Hialeah Hospital in Hialeah, Florida, USA after a heart attack. He had previously divorced his wife, Shirley. His 2 children, a son and a daughter, were always by his side during his final hours. He said, "My son was not allowed to participate in arms sales. I didn't even tell him." And then he sarcastically said, when he invented dynamite, Alfred Nobel was called the Merchant of Death by his contemporaries, but later, they used his name to name prizes in medicine, chemistry, physics, literature, economics, and peace. As for me, I am just a businessman, so they can call me whatever they want. Every war has one or more origins, not just when you want it to happen. According to the war merchant, there are hundreds of ways to prevent black market weapons. With today's advanced technology, when you hand over a gun to someone, that person must immediately activate the gun control system through fingerprints. Then only when the person holding the gun has the same fingerprint as the activated fingerprint can he shoot. The life of Sarkis Garabet Saganalian is a testament to the complexity and contradictions in the world of international arms trafficking. From a person who was awarded by the US government to a person who was arrested and imprisoned, he has experienced dramatic ups and downs. Whether called the biggest arms smuggler of the 90s or the war merchant, Saganalian has left a deep mark in the history of arms trafficking. His secret dealings and complex relationships with many governments and organizations have created a mysterious legend. His life and career are not only a story of power and money, but also a lesson in the consequences and conflicts of the underworld. From any perspective, Sarkis Garabet Saganalian remains an unforgettable figure in the history of the international arms trade.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And as always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.